Welcome into Candlestick Chronicles, a 49ers podcast on the Blue Wire Podcast Network. I'm Kyle Madsen. I write about the 49ers over at NinersWire.com, part of the USA Today Sports Media Group. Joining me now, Chris Biederman of the Sacramento Bee, and we're first going to talk about our friends over at Lamb Chops, my favorite clothing brand, your favorite clothing brand, and the official clothing brand of Candlestick Chronicles. SGLambchops.com is the website. Promo code Candlestick20 to get 20% off your order. Hoodies, joggers, shorts, whatever you want. It's all high quality. It's all comfortable. And it's my favorite thing to wear.
Agreed. Sweats, shorts, shirts, hoodies. It's all super
shorts.
high quality. Sweat shorts, amazing. Why haven't sweat shorts been a bigger part of just clothing culture for longer?
I have no idea, but Lamb Chops is bringing them in, and I'm going to make sure they stay around.
Yeah, they're amazing.
Yeah, big fan. Big fan of sweat shorts. Big fan of Lamb Chops. You will be too. Go to sglambchops.com today. Use promo code Candlestick20 to get 20% off your order, and follow them on Instagram for photos of all their new styles. It's at sglambchops on Instagram. We're also sponsored by Cooperage Brewing. CooperageBrewing.com is the website. You can go there. You can order beer. If you're in California and over the age of 21, they will send a case of beer directly to your front door. There's no better way to acquire beer. So get in there and get that Candlestick Chronicles Hazy IPA. Maybe hazy IPAs aren't your thing. Maybe you want a double dry hopped IPA. And boy, do they have one of those in Keg Slayer, which is a tremendous beer. Big fan of Keg Slayer. I think they have a Friday the 13th coming out.
Halloween season.
Spooky season. But yeah, all good beer. All great stuff.
Award-winning beer.
Yeah, they just had a Dortmunder, which is a pretty rare kind of beer, I guess, that won a gold medal at the World Beer Festival. Like, come on, man.
Is that good? Gold medals, are those good?
Seems good.
I'm trying to look it up. This is bad on the spot podcasting right now. I'm trying to look it up as we go through the read. But no, we love Cooperage. We were there over the weekend. Awesome vibes, great art all over the place.
Really good art.
Great place to watch football, great place to just hang and drink beer. So shout out to Cooperage in Santa Rosa. Go there. If you're in the area, even if you're not, you want to plan a trip to Sonoma County and put it on your list of destinations, would highly recommend it. And if not, like you said, CooperageBrewing.com. If you're of age, 21 or older, you can have them ship a case of beer anywhere within the state of California.
Yep. Do that right now. CooperageBrewing.com. You won't regret it. All right, let's preview this 49ers-Cardinals game. Hey, everything about this game is fishy, bro. Everything about it.
Elaborate.
And I mean that from the standpoint of the Cardinals, despite being 1-2, they beat the Cowboys last week, like thoroughly, just beat them. And they were a couple plays away. Kyle Shanahan said this too. They're a few plays away from being 3-0. So, and honestly, if Josh Dobbs played in week 1 the way he's played the last 2 weeks, they would probably be at least 2-1. So, all of that is to say the 49ers are still favored by 14 points. And we were just going through our prize picks, which we'll get to later, and all the numbers for Cardinals players are suspiciously low. And everything feels fishy to me because everything points to the Cardinals, if not pulling an upset, covering the 14 points, and then you get to the daily fantasy stuff like prize picks, and all of the numbers seem mysteriously low. Like, okay, I'm going to hammer the more than, but what am I? It feels like I'm missing something.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those games that if you wanted to find, like, it fits the trap game narratives, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have a really good team in the Niners with a really tough game coming up the week later with the Cowboys coming to Santa Clara. It screams like possible letdown for the 49ers, and we've credited them for playing with a certain level of intensity to start the season. You wonder going into, the 4th week of the season, is that intensity still going to be there? And that, I think, is the challenge for the 49ers, knowing that, when they play as well as they can and they turn it on, they can compete with anybody, obviously. But does that lead to the human nature element of falling into the trap of the trap game and allowing a hungry team like Arizona coming off a big win and maybe riding a little bit of momentum. Are they feeling themselves to the point where they think they can come to Santa Clara and win and steal one? I think they probably do feel that way. I am expecting the 49ers to win relatively comfortably, but if you were to tell me it was one of those games where it's like 10-10 going into halftime and the 49ers have to play at a considerably higher level in the second half to win the game than they did in the first, that wouldn't at all surprise me. I just think ultimately the talent gap is so wide and the coaching gap, given how long the infrastructure with Kyle Shanahan has been in place there relative to Jonathan Gannon, who's there in his first season in Arizona, I would give the 49ers a pretty decided edge sort of regardless. But like to your point, I think 14 points is an insane line for this one. And it's I think it should, like we said in the last podcast we recorded last night, the line should probably be closer to 9 or 10.
Mm-hmm.
So it just feels like you said, this has the makings of a potential trap game. Although it could be that the 49ers win by 21 points and then we come out of it like, yeah, that's probably what should happen.
Okay, so that's the other thing. I think this game goes one of two ways. One, if you told me just a carbon copy of the Rams game happened, I would not be shocked. Really at all. Granted, the Rams have more talent than the Cardinals do. But if you just told me, yeah, the Cardinals jumped out and punched the Niners in the mouth a little bit, but the Niners recovered and eventually in the second half figured out what was going on and pulled away just because they were the better team and probably should have won by double digits, but the Rams kicked a last-second field goal to make it 7. Like it wouldn't floor me. Like I would be like, okay, sure, that'll happen, or the Niners steamroll them and we're sitting here going, oh, okay, maybe the Cardinals' first 3 weeks is a little fluky. I think those are the two options here. Granted, they did just beat the Cowboys, who everybody thought they were going to get smashed by too. So,
yeah,
I'm looking. I any given Sunday, right? Like that's the phrase. I just made it up, but you can use it. But when you're trying to logically draw a path to a Cardinals win, logically it just doesn't track. Outside of the Niners having injuries or turning the ball over 6 times or I don't know, weird stuff happening, the Cardinals aren't just going to line up mano a mano and be better than San Francisco.
No, I was trying to find just now like Brock Purdy's splits in the first and second halves, and there isn't a whole lot of difference. Like his completion percentage is a little bit higher in the second half. His quarterback rating is a little bit higher in the second half, but still really good. But I think one area where like yards per attempt, he's just a lot more efficient in the second half, and albeit a very small sample size. Yards per attempt in the first half of games through 3 weeks, 7.3, which isn't particularly good, right? And you go back to the Rams game and you say, all right, like he was probably better in the second half than the first in that game, and you can absolutely say that about the Giants game. So 7.3 yards per attempt in the first half. He's up to 9.5 in yards per attempt in the second half, which is an elite number. Like anything over 8 is good. 8.5 is exceptional. 9, obviously outstanding. 9.5 is just like otherworldly.
If you're at 9.5, you're winning the MVP.
Yeah. So, Brock Purdy and the 49ers offense has done a good job of making adjustments in the second half of games through at least, 3 games, obviously. So I do wonder if there's something to that. Like, are they at a point now where like teams come in with a pretty good plan in the first half of games, and then the adjustment off of that made by Kyle Shanahan and his staff is like, all right, we can tinker with this and we can get better. And does that like speak to Brock Purdy's overall maturity? Right? Like, is he advanced enough as a rookie quarterback, or not a rookie quarterback, but a guy who still hasn't started a full season, where you're like, man, Brock Purdy is not like a lot of young quarterbacks you look at, right? You're like, all right, they just have to get better, right? The adjustment isn't really them tinkering, it's them needing to play better because playing in the NFL is hard and you got to get used to it if you're a young quarterback. Whereas Brock Purdy feels like he's already at the point where he's operating more like a veteran and like, no, like my play's fine. We just got to make schematic adjustments and fundamental adjustments to what they're doing defensively.
Right.
And I feel like the fact that it looks like they're doing that would indicate that Brock Purdy is maybe more advanced than somebody who's only started. How many starts does he have?
That's the thing that's so impressive
8.
about him, right? Is he gets
Yeah,
talked
Purdy
about
has
like
8 starts.
he gets talked about and compared on a level with Jimmy Garoppolo. And what does he look like up against Jimmy Garoppolo? He has a 5th or 6th or 7th of the starts that Jimmy Garoppolo has in the league. And he's remarkable. That one of the things that always jumps out to me from or always sticks in my head from Matt Barrow's article in The Athletic where he got to be in the locker room at halftime. And he talks about Brock Purdy as all the players are going out for the half. Kyle Shanahan's written a bunch of different stuff on the board about play calls and what they're going to do differently offensively, and they're going to do this against that look and this against that look and da-da-da-da. And how Purdy just stood there as everybody exited, just soaking that information in, just standing in front of the whiteboard and taking all that in. And then going out, and it's very clear that, okay, he can take all that in and then go out and execute it. And that's super impressive for somebody as young as he is, and it's why somebody with his physical limitations, I shouldn't say physical limitations, his lack of elite physical tools can be so successful. So that's where if you told me that the Niners started slow, I wouldn't necessarily be worried that they were going to lose a game because we've yet to see them over a full, I almost said 48 minutes, 60 minutes, talking basketball today, for a full 60 minutes, get shut down on that side of the ball.
Yeah, I would agree. Yep. That's something I was gonna say, and it completely eluded me. Oh, we should talk about. I know what we're gonna talk about. Deebo Samuel is gonna be questionable to play, as of Kyle Shanahan going on radio Thursday and saying that Deebo Samuel and Juwan Jennings would be questionable. Brandon Ayuk has returned to practice this week after missing the Thursday night game with a shoulder injury. It kind of feels like we might be at a place where, like, these guys aren't really going to risk playing, at least earlier in the year, against, inferior teams. Like, I think if you were to spin forward Brandon Ayuk's injury Thursday, that would indicate to me that, like, any of their dudes who they feel like is established could probably afford to miss some time if it means not aggravating an injury. And that's why, again, we keep saying it, but that's why you have so many good players, right? Is like, it might seem excessive to go get Christian McCaffrey when you have Deebo Samuel, et cetera, et cetera. But, like, there are going to be times when Deebo Samuel has a knee and rib injuries, and you're just like, man, we could afford to give this guy a week off because we do have Christian McCaffrey and Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle. So I wonder if we're going to see the 49ers maybe be a little bit more cautious this season than in years past, particularly in like September and October, in comparison to when they would play guys who were banged up and who would often aggravate injuries, right? Like, I think it's a very fair criticism of, this coaching staff and this performance staff in the last few years, that they've allowed players to push it, whether on the practice field or even in games when they were hurt, to be like, like missing additional weeks because they came back too early. And I wonder if they're sort of looking at this like, no, we can take things a little bit slower. We're super talented. We can probably beat the Cardinals without Deebo Samuel and Juwan Jennings still. It would be a little bit more difficult, obviously, but I don't know. Do you agree with that? Do you think there's a sentiment in the building that, like, maybe they should be a little bit more protective of their injured players than previously?
Yeah, I definitely think so. This is a team that's looking at January. And I don't think they're necessarily worried about the Cardinals in week 4, and obviously you're not going to overlook them, but from the standpoint of, is there a path to victory without Deebo Samuel, I think you have to say yes, especially considering that last year, week 14, Deebo Samuel gets hurt against the Buccaneers. The 49ers still put 35 points up in that game. The next week, a short week, Thursday in Seattle, they only scored 21. Brock Purdy was dealing with the rib thing, and he couldn't throw all week. They scored 21. In the 2 games after that, they scored 37 points each without Deebo Samuel. And that's with George Kittle and Brandon Ayuk and Christian McCaffrey. So I think they're probably looking at that and going, with Christian McCaffrey in the lineup now, there's no reason that they have to force Deebo Samuel to get on the field. Maybe it means a little more Elijah Mitchell, so Christian McCaffrey can stay on the field later in the game. But I'm very confident in the 49ers offense without Deebo Samuel, and I'm guessing they are too, considering the potential long-term benefit, especially if it's a knee thing. I don't think there's necessarily a reason to go try and push that this early.
Particularly with the Cowboys next week.
Right.
Yeah.
And again, not that it's about overlooking the Cardinals, because I think Dallas probably did that a little bit. They got smacked in the mouth. But it's just about, okay, with this one player, what can you do offensively without him? And is it enough to win? And I think they say yes.
Agree.
Yeah. So that's where I'm at. I'm not putting Deebo Samuel in any of my prize picks.
That's fair. Do you have Ronnie Bell in any of your prize picks?
I don't. No, I don't.
So let's start there. Let's do our Cooperage What's on Tap. Basically a segment where we just sort of talk about elements of the game that we think are going to be important. I think if one of or both of Deebo Samuel and Juwan Jennings doesn't play, do you get production again from Ronnie Bell? Right? I think more or less you have to.
Sure.
You have to get a semblance of production. You can't have Ronnie Bell out there and be a non-factor, particularly because it feels like Brandon Ayuk would get bracketed and double covered a lot. And maybe that allows for more opportunities for George Kittle. But I think Ronnie Bell, if Ronnie Bell is a good game, if he has 4 or 5 catches and maybe he has a touchdown, I think the Niners probably blow him out.
I think that's it. Yeah. Okay.
If Ronnie Bell is not productive, if these guys don't play, then there's an opportunity for the Cardinals to keep it closer than we would probably expect, right?
Yeah, you have to force the Cardinals to cover everybody. Like it's a huge problem if they don't have to worry about Ray McLeod or Ronnie Bell or whoever. If you start forcing them to, either cover those guys or make those guys beat them, and then they're succeeding at that, then yeah, I'm totally with you. No Juwan Jennings, no Deebo Samuel. If that is indeed the case, they need someone else to step up. And if Ronnie Bell is going to have 5 for 48 and a touchdown, then that probably means the Cardinals had a hard time stopping the 49ers. Along that same line, I think George Kittle is going to get in the end zone this week for the first time. For the first time this season. I mean,
he scored touchdowns before.
Yeah, I think George Kittle is going to get his first touchdown this week, guys. No, I think he gets in the end zone this week. The Niners haven't been awesome in the red zone necessarily, especially Thursday night against the Giants. And I think you saw George Kittle start to get a little bit more involved on the stretch of that game. And I think that's going to continue over into this one. And the Cardinals just don't have the horses to slow down a guy like George Kittle. Not that many teams do, but I think there's going to be a lot of stuff drawn up specifically to get Kittle involved, and specifically in the red zone.
Budda Baker is still injured, correct?
Yeah, he's on IR.
Yeah. Which means that you're looking at Kaiser White and a backup safety.
Yeah, and a linebacker who can't cover.
Yeah. So I think I'm with you 100%. I think it needs to be a big George Kittle game.
Yeah. Yeah, if George Kittle has a 3 for 28 type of game, I don't love that.
Yeah. It's also like a Brock Purdy game where he has a chance to elevate the offense in a way that we normally don't associate with him when we talk about Purdy.
Mm-hmm.
So often the conversation about Purdy is, well, he's in ideal surroundings. He has great weapons. He can, when he's struggling, he can just throw bubble screens. If those Debo Samuel bubble screens aren't there, and the Cardinals are obviously going to hone in on Christian McCaffrey,
Mm-hmm.
then what's Brock Purdy going to do to elevate the offense when the circumstances aren't as good as they've been?
Yeah, great point.
So I'm looking. I think it's time for Brock Purdy to just have one of those games where it's like, no, he's just going to be super efficient. He's going to be aggressive. He's
Mm-hmm.
going to make good throws downfield, and it's not just going to be Brock Purdy threw a bubble screen 4 times to Debo Samuel, and he got 70 yards out of that and a touchdown. And obviously that helps Brock Purdy's numbers, but he wasn't playing awesome, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the Giants game. He was a little scattershot, I would say, in the Giants game, particularly in the first half. Good in the second half. But I think you need Brock Purdy to elevate the way he plays and the offense overall
Mm-hmm.
if you're not going to have Debo and Juwan.
Yeah, yeah. Not having that Debo screen club in your bag is a pretty significant deal, and not having the threat of him as a runner. And I know we saw that a little bit from Ronnie Bell in the preseason, but that's preseason. I'm not ready to say that Ronnie Bell is just going to do the Debo light thing in the regular season, but maybe he does. And maybe they miss Debo even less than they did last year when he was out for those few games. Along the same lines, I also think Christian McCaffrey's getting in the end zone through the air this week. He doesn't have a receiving touchdown yet, and it's at some point it's going to happen. And you start looking at this Cardinals defense and just their lack of weapons in the second and third levels, and it's just so easy to see a play where they blitz and it's McCaffrey all alone out in the flat and he finds an easy score. Maybe it's off of Brock Purdy because the Cardinals can rush the passer a little bit, especially off the edge. It's Dennis Gardick and Victor Dimukeje are their two leaders in pressures and sacks. So maybe they're able to get some pressure with 4, and it's Purdy, not necessarily making a hot read into the middle of the field, but just getting rid of it out to McCaffrey in the flat, and McCaffrey going and making a play against a not so good back end of the Cardinals defense. So I think McCaffrey gets a receiving touchdown as well this week.
I like it.
Thanks.
Go to the other side of the ball. I don't consider the Cardinals' offensive line awesome.
It's not
Fair?
great.
Is that
Yeah,
fair?
no, it's not. It's not great.
Paris Johnson, I believe an Ohio State alum,
Correct.
is their new starting right tackle. And I wonder if this is going to be a Nick Bosa game where it's like, okay, like Nick Bosa is absolutely due for a breakout type game, right?
Right.
Like
Yep.
he hasn't played poorly, but it hasn't been defensive player of the year Nick Bosa through the first 3 games. And I think you
Right.
could attribute that mostly to just not having training camp reps and not being in football shape.
Yep.
I know we talked to reporters this week about maybe being closer or in football shape now that he's had 3 games under his belt.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at the Cardinals as an opportunity for Bosa to eat
Yeah.
and to get a sack or 2 at least,
Mm-hmm.
and potentially wreck this game for them. And that's, that might be, again, if the Niners are missing Debo and Jennings, it might, the Niners defense is going to might have to play like at a high level, like not just kind of float through this game, like play with a level of intensity that makes up for the offense's shortcomings if it's going to struggle a little bit more than normal because they're missing 2 of their receivers.
Yeah.
Um, and I would go right to Nick Bosa and say, all right, you're in football shape now. You're going up against a potentially, if you play on the left side of the defensive line, you're going against a rookie right tackle who went to your alma mater. He should know DJ Humphries on the other side extremely well, given how often
Mm-hmm.
he's played against him. So I would say that this has the potential to be a Nick Bosa breakout game.
I think the Niners defense gets 2 turnovers, and maybe one of them is a Bosa strip sack. But yeah, I think banking on a Bosa breakout game is probably the move. Josh Dobbs doesn't have a turnover yet this year. He's been really, really good at not forcing the ball into tight spots, but he's also not played I guess Dallas's pass rush is also very good, but um, the Niners defense turns it over a lot. So I wouldn't be shocked if it's Bosa doing that, if it's Javon Hargrave up the middle forcing an early throw. But I think the Niners get a couple of turnovers, and I think one of them is a Fred Warner interception. I think a Fred Warner interception is on tap.
My guy Joe Monty asked over under 1.5 sacks for Bosa. Predicting a multiple sack game is generally overly optimistic, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to say 2 sacks for Bosa.
I love that for you.
Thank you so much.
I was going to be a coward and go under.
Yeah, Joe commented on the live stream on YouTube. If you're not checking out our YouTube channel yet, please do subscribe, hit the like button, hit the bell notification. Super helpful to the channel. Obviously, if you're listening to this on our podcast feed, we very much appreciate it. Hopefully, you've given us 5-star rating on whatever platform you're listening to us on. But yeah, if you haven't checked us out on YouTube, you can listen to the podcast and see our faces at the same time. It's quite the thing.
It's really dope. It's such a cool thing. You want to get into our prize picks?
Yeah, let's take a quick break and get into our prize picks.
I'm having so much fun doing prize picks, dude.
The prize picks, the break was for the audio. Hopefully the video people didn't like go up and get snacks or something. Well,
being able,
we're gonna take a couple minutes.
Being able, we just get up and leave. Being able to just jump in ahead of Thursday Night Football, and we'll dive in deeper into the Niners side of this. But being able to jump in right before Thursday Night Football starts and just put together an entry is my favorite thing. I have AJ Dillon less than 33.5 rushing yards. He has 3 right now in the first quarter. I have Aaron Jones more than 17.5 receiving yards. He has 1 target, no catches so far. Aiden Hutchinson and Alex Anzalone, more than 3/4 of a sack. Hutchinson already has 1, so nailed that. And then I have Jordan Love less than 3.5 rushing attempts, and I feel great about it.
So I think Jared Goff threw an interception on the first possession, and I've just looked back at the screen, and the Lions are up 14-3.
Yeah, dog, they're cooking. Yeah, tough scene for the Packers.
Kind of like the Lions. Yeah, we'll see.
The Lions are good, dude. I was in denial. The Lions can play.
Ooh. Jordan Love almost threw an interception. I was very wrong about Aiden Hutchinson. I thought coming out that he was just kind of a tryhard who like had a great motor and cleaned up a lot of sacks, but like wasn't as talented as where he was drafted.
Mm-hmm.
It turns out he looks like he's the real deal.
Dude can play. He can play a little bit of football.
Dude can play a little bit of football. All right. So prize picks for Sunday Niners-Cardinals. I'm doing a power play, which means I have to hit all 3 to get my multipliers. I can't get 1 or 2. I have to get all 3 to win here. So my entry starts with my guy, the guy I've never questioned once, the guy who I've had unabashed faith in the entire time, including week 1, when he just showed so much toughness and resilience battling through that quad injury. I have Jake Moody more than 1.5 field goals made.
Hell yeah.
I just think the Niners might bog down in the red zone or at least once, right? I think there's an opportunity maybe at the end of the second quarter to Jake Moody to kick a 78-yard field goal. He's just going to bang through the winds into the north uprights. I do think there's like the Niners offense is probably not going to be as awesome as it normally would be. And so I think that just means Jake Moody's going to have more chances at field goals. So more than 1.5, I think is a good play.
I love that you're rolling with your guy too.
My guy, just unequivocally since day one. Once the pick was made, I was all in on the third round kicker.
The top 100 kicker, no less. What else
Is
you
he a
got?
top third kicker in the league so far?
Yes, without
Okay,
question. Go Blue.
I have
I sat. Hang on, real quick. Pause on the Go Blue thing. I sat next to the homie Josh Dubow, reporter for the Associated Press.
shout
Sat
out.
next to him at the 49ers home opener against the
Listener
Giants.
to the pod.
Pod listener. That's why I'm telling this story. And my man just doling out the Jake Moody facts on all these records, and he's the third kicker to make this many field goals in his first X starts without a miss. Just incredibly on brand from our guy and Michigan alum Josh Dubow.
Tagging me in the tweets.
It made me so happy. It made me so happy.
Yeah, shout out to Josh. We love Josh.
Big Josh fan.
Christian McCaffrey. More than the NFL's NFL's rushing leader.
There you go.
Easy for me to say. The reigning NFC Offensive Player of the Month. More than 81.5 rush yards. The Cardinals gave up 185 rushing yards to the Cowboys on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And 127 to the Giants before that. So I just think there are going to be opportunities for CMC to rack up some rushing yards. I don't have any really like strong analysis for this one other than CMC is really good.
That's it. That's the extent of it. Spoiler alert. I also have a Christian McCaffrey one. My analysis is going to be like, yeah, dog, he's good.
He's the truth.
He's got that dog in him.
Facts. Fax machine dot gif.
Stop.
My third one, Rondale Moore, somehow only had 8 yards on 4 catches last week against the Giants. I don't really know how that's possible, but he also had...
So he catches it and then immediately gets tackled.
Right. He also had 54 rushing yards on 3 attempts. I just think Rondale Moore is the type of receiver who might pose somewhat of a matchup problem for the Niners defense. Like the Niners play a lot of zone. They don't have the smallest, quickest guys. Like they typically, when they yield yards, it's often to like smaller, quicker receivers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
on that underneath stuff.
Yeah, on the underneath stuff, the potential for some bubble screens and some yak there. And this is mostly just about like what the number is. Like Rondale Moore, the number is 27.5. And I'm going more than 27.5 for Rondale Moore. Not that I think he's going to have a huge game, but like he could easily have 27.5 or more on one play.
Dude, that's just it. I whether it's a catch and run or a Josh Dobbs is scrambling around and Talanoa Hufanga gets over aggressive and flies down and all I can think of is Hollywood Brown. Rondale Moore sneaks in behind him and goes for 45 yards for his only catch. Like that wouldn't shock me at all.
Yeah. So
it's a sneaky low number though.
It's just a low number. Like
I hate that the number is so low.
Like Rondale Moore has not really done anything from a receiving standpoint this season. He has 8 catches for 55 yards on the season. But like we view Rondale Moore as a pretty good player and like a pretty explosive player.
I'd say explosive more than good.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. I just I think for the Cardinals offense to do anything, they're going to have to force feed him a little bit, get the ball in his hands and try to get some yak and those types of things. So I think Rondale Moore is the type who should go over 27.5 this week.
Okay. I dig that.
The Lions are driving again.
Yeah, the Lions have 9 first downs to Green Bay's 0 and 199 yards to Green Bay's 1 on the first play of the second quarter. That's crazy. Okay, here's what my entry looks like for 49ers-Cardinals. I'm doing the flex play because I love the flex play because I feel like I always get one wrong. Like I'm always off on one player. So having that flex play option where your winnings, your max winnings are maybe a little less, but you can miss one and still get a little bit back is an awesome part of Prize Picks Daily Fantasy. So Christian McCaffrey, I have more than 113.5 rushing plus receiving yards. He might go over that just in rushing, but 80 rushing yards and 35 receiving yards gets him there. That I think that's on the table. So I'm going more than that number. Jake Moody, I also have in here. I have more than 7.5 points for Jake Moody. 2 field goals, 2 extra points. That's easy work to me. Brock Purdy, I'm going to go less than 225.5 passing yards because he was really efficient against both the Rams and Steelers and went less than that number in both those games. So you could very easily paint a game script where the Niners aren't throwing a ton and Purdy is just efficient enough in the first 3 quarters that they pack in the passing game for the fourth quarter, and he has 219 yards and a couple of touchdowns, and the Niners have up 3 scores. So I'm going less than that number. And then James Conner, another sneaky low number here. I have more than 15.5 receiving yards for James Conner, and that's another one where you could see the Cardinals getting in 3rd and long, throwing a screen to him. He gets behind a blocker and goes for 20 on 1 reception. So I like James Conner more than 15.5 receiving yards on Sunday. Prize Picks, baby.
Let's go.
I might make another entry before the game because that's just the kind of guy I am. If you want to join us, and I'm telling you, this is super fun. This isn't like a script. I'm genuinely like being able to just pull out the phone, hop on the Prize Picks app, see what's going on, and making entries. And then it just gives you, whether it's college football or NFL football, whatever, it's a blast. And you can join us. Go to prizepicks.com/candlestick and use code candlestick for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/candlestick and use code candlestick for a first deposit match up to $100. Send us your entries. You can fade us. You can tail us, whatever you want to do. It's such a great way to consume sports with daily fantasy, and Prize Picks makes it easy. So,
absolutely. You have any? What's your final score prediction? I should
27-17 49ers.
I will go 24-13.
I dig it.
Niners. For that, if you're
like
betting the game, if 14 points just feels like a lot of points.
It's so many, dude. It's so many.
But
maybe the like I said, maybe the Niners are just dialed and they go win it 34-3, and it's like, oh yeah, that's
if
what
they
happens
cover
when a good team plays a bad team.
If they cover 14 points without Deebo Samuel, I would be very impressed.
Me too. So, me too, dog.
Anyway, all right, we will talk to you guys after the game on Sunday night. Check us out again on our YouTube channel, Candlestick Chronicles podcast on YouTube, and subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts and listen to us. And we'll talk to you guys real soon. Enjoy your weekends.